if you discover it at 20, not only are you set for life, right? But your kids are. The family you build in the future are going to be set because you knew this from the start. A lot of kids are literally born in blue light, raised in blue light, which is a tragedy for me to even contemplate. But if you find this out at 20, 16, whatever, the electron transport chain has 5 respiratory proteins, 1 through 5. If you use cyanide, you block number 4, you cut off that electron flow, 1 through 5, and you die within minutes. Okay, that's how critical this mitochondria function is.
Hello and welcome. I'm Sarah, and today I'm talking with Kenford Bitana, who got into quantum biology in his very early 20s, and he wants to emphasize how much of an advantage you can have if you get into the light, water, and magnetism early. Kenford's going to explain to you what his problem was, which was sleep and mood, and how he tried everything from supplements to a mattress that cost thousands of dollars, and he still couldn't get to sleep. He's also going to point you at resources that he found really useful when he got started in the quantum biology journey. So I'll hand you over to him now. Welcome to the channel, Kenford. Do you want to introduce yourself so that people can get to know you, and then maybe say how you got into quantum biology and some of your health journey and how this is going to help? I don't really want to say the word young people, but sort of teenagers, people in their 20s, the ones who take their health for granted, but also how can it help parents who want to help their children?
Right. Sarah, thank you for having me on. You were the first person on my show, so I'm always grateful for you to have gotten the ball rolling for me. Uh, Honestly, I'm just a normal guy, but as for how I got started into this rabbit hole, growing up was a bit of a sketchy situation for me, and it led me to be super like a meta optimist. I would try to optimize every area of my life because there was this hole in my heart and I had to compensate, right? And one of those areas was health. You know, feel good on the outside, inside, and if I really optimize my body, then I'll feel good as well. So that's my health journey. And initially, you go into the exercise stuff. You want to big, build big muscles. You go down that rabbit hole. And then when you want to exercise and stuff, you realize, oh, you need to eat well and not eat dirty bulk and all that stuff. So I went down the nutrition rabbit hole for a year or two. And I was into the carnivore. I was essentially jumping between diet camps. I would read a book from a carnivore author, a vegan author, and everything in between. And I was accumulating all this information, and I came to a certain point where I just couldn't reconcile it at all. And not only that, when I was applying these diets, it didn't move the needle much. I had a lot of brain fog still. I didn't feel as good as I would expect. I'd see my peers not give any effort or commitment to their diet and lifestyles, and we'd be on a similar, physical state. And it didn't make sense to me because I was putting in a lot of effort in comparison to them, but I didn't seem to get the returns I wanted. So I was like, yeah, this is all very confusing. The carnivores are saying this, the vegans are saying this. Both seem true, and I don't know what to do. I don't feel good either. So, and the main thing that I was really struggling with was sleep. For the life of me, I could not sleep well. Uh, Night would come, and I would be like, okay, it's night. I've meditated. I've listened to binaural beats. Hopefully, I'm relaxed enough. Okay, let's sleep. And then I'd spend 4 hours anxious about sleep, and I could never fall asleep. And so I can't sleep for the night, and then I wake up for the day. I'm tired because I haven't slept. Come nighttime, I can't sleep. So it was that cycle of being tired during the day, but then when it comes to nighttime for rest, you can't rejuvenate yourself. And I lived that life for a solid year, and it was quite a difficult existence, as you can imagine. So
Just
some of the remedies,
on
yeah.
that topic, because another big problem for teens and people in their 20s is mental health. So, with all of this
uh,
problem you're having with sleep, did you have ADHD or depression or anxiety as well in the day, along with insomnia?
yeah, it kind of goes together. I would There's like no motivation when you have no sleep, you have no recharge, right? So there's no bandwidth for anything else. And so I would be on my phone a lot. Obviously, that's draining my dopamine. ADHD, my short attention span. Uh, 15-minute YouTube videos were an exercise of attention. I would stop halfway and go to the next one. Um, Depression in the sense that you don't feel like doing anything. You kind of work, go home, and escape and do nothing. There was no capacity or bandwidth, like I said, to do anything else that was productive. And eventually it got so bad that I was like, okay, what capacity and bandwidth I do have, I'm gonna keep with this health stuff because I got to get out of this rut. So yeah, I've definitely it was. I'm tired. I'm anxious around people. When I get home, I'm just like as brain dead as you could possibly imagine. And then when it comes for nighttime, there's more anxiety about the next day, about feeling crappy, and it was a lot, right? So lots of mental anguish in that period. And so in this space, pre-quantum biology, the remedies are very supplemental or other things. So a couple things I tried were obviously magnesium supplements. Any supplement I could try, I'd like look around on the internet. Each supplement was saying, "Oh, this is the thing that'll cure your sleep. This is it. This is it." I tried most of them and they weren't doing anything for me. So then it got to a point where I got so desperate that I bought this like special bed that cooled the surface. It like had water running through the surface of it. It's called like 8 sleep, and it lowered the surface of the bed down to the most optimal temperature for sleep. And I spent a couple grand on that. It was a hefty purchase, and even that didn't help. And so I was just desperate. I was just like, what is gonna work? I've done everything. This sleep thing is just not going away. And yeah, in that like place of desperation, that was where I was at. And so just to backtrack a little bit, when you buy a lot of health books on Amazon, your algorithm's kind of tailored to you, right? So I would get a lot of health book recommendations and stuff. And so one day in this despair, this desperation, I see a book called The Mitochondriac Manifesto. I don't know if you've read that one,
Yes, I
but
have. Good old Randy. He's doing a
Randy.
particular event in Oregon that I'm hopefully speaking at next year. So yes, Randy the Mito Man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that book popped up on I had never heard of Jack Cruz anything prior to, like, just to set the context. Never heard of Jack Cruz, never seen a sunrise in my life. I had no idea what this paradigm entailed, right? I was all food and supplements, exercise guy. And so I look at this book on Amazon, I look at the title and I'm like, this looks pretty like a normal health book. I'll look at the reviews, I guess. So I look down. There's 5-star reviews, a few of them. And then one of the reviewers said, "Hey, I'm a health nut. I've read every book, every blog for 10 years or something like that. And this book by Randy is the best thing I've ever read. I'm gonna need to reread it over and over and over again." And me being a health nut and having scoured everything, and when you're in the health space, there's a certain point where everything's already like sounds the same. There's not a lot of novelty. You've heard this and that repackaged, right? And so that part of the review piqued my interest. Like, oh, I'm familiarized enough. I've dove down the rabbit hole. Let's see what this book is about because I don't let's see, right? So I get the book, I open up, read the first 20 pages, and I'm immediately hooked, right? And I proceed to devour that book in 3 days. And essentially, one of the biggest realizations I gained from that book was that section on blue light. And that section on blue light really cleared everything up for me. So to tie this back into sleep, Randy was saying, hey, your eye, it's reading light and turning it into a message for time. And when you're looking at your phone at night, when there's overhead lights at night, it's your body thinks it's daytime. It's running physiological functions that correlate with daytime. And so I look back to all my insomnia nights and I realized I'm taking a magnesium supplement under artificial light. It didn't make any sense. I bought this cooling system of a bed and I'm under artificial light and I'm on my phone. And it made me realize why everything else I tried just didn't work. And so he said the solution was you got to watch the sunrise. And so immediately went to work in implementing it. I got blue blocking glasses. I started to watch the sunrise. I started blocking blue light at night. And this is like a $50 purchase. And within 3 to 4 weeks, my sleep came back and normalized. Normalized it wasn't perfect, but I got sleep right for the first time in a long time. And so I was like, wow, a sunrise and just blocking blue light at night, that's it. I went through all that gymnastics of this supplement, this gadget, that gadget, just to like connect to the light dark cycle. And that's what fixed it. Amazing. So, oh my God, this paradigm is awesome and it makes so much sense. So reread that book 2 more times at least. And everything started to click, the biophysical lens, how every other paradigm is operating on a biochemical level as if that's the deepest level. But Randy introduced me to Jack, who took us down deeper, right? And that's pretty much how I got started. It just kind of clicked. Quantum biology is intricate, but it can be translated in a way where it's just common sense. And I really fell in love with it at that point. So yeah, that was my journey to finding this paradigm.
Thank you. That's really helpful because I think also, even though this podcast is for everybody, a big problem teens and people in their early 20s have is acne. And blue light is a huge contributor to that. And also, I think I know people who've spent thousands of dollars on skin treatments and this, that, and the other, and that's been their major pain point. So maybe, again, another thing that's really important are hormones, because I see a lot of labs and I just see worse and worse and worse hormones in people in their early 20s, males and females. So what could you say about hormones and blue light and how you felt? Because you mentioned earlier you had no like limited dopamine and didn't want to do anything. And again, libido and all of that, that's important for everybody. But maybe you want to elaborate on that side of the quantum biology.
Yes. So I haven't gotten any labs, so I can't test it for sure. And say, oh, before quantum biology, my testosterone was tanked, and after it was. I can't speak on that, but just for the listener, quantum biology really shifted my lens on this aspect of health to hormone health. Um, so first of all, a main principle in this paradigm is that light is a primary driver of our biochemistry. Traditional endocrinology, it's a lot about, you know, receptors, lock and key mechanisms. These things kind of just happen in a closed system. And you work with that closed system, you take these supplements, and yeah, your labs will improve. And I notice a lot of naturopaths, a lot of health practitioners, they operate on that level, right? But immediately you realize it all starts with light entering your eye. There's a book by Fritz Hallwich. It's called like the ocular perception of. I'm sure you can link that in the show notes, but that's a critical book in my understanding of this, where the light in your eye is the first input to how your hormone cascades roll downstream. And so, especially if you're under a blue light, artificial light that's 6,000 Kelvin, that is equivalent to midday, a solar noon, right? And your hormone cascades have a similar correspondence to that. So it's peak stress, peak daytime, peak activity. And so in a normal diurnal cycle, that's normal, right? You want that at 12 p.m. noon. But the problem is we turn on our light in the morning to get ready for work, and we're giving our body that signal at 6 a.m. And so imagine giving that signal to our body of peak activity for 11 hours a day at least, because that's just what we're surrounded by. And so a lot of health practitioners on the green side, not both allopathic and green, I'll say, they don't see that aspect. That light sets the context for how your hormones operate just through it entering the eye alone, and a multitude of factors. You could go into the action spectra, POMC, how that gets cleaved by UV light. It's a whole Quantum biology opens up a whole nother dimension of endocrinology, photoendocrinology, and another person that you could um, look into to expand your understanding on this is Alexander Wunsch. He has a great video on photoendocrinology. You can find it on Vimeo. It's a 2016 video. But essentially, if I were to take you from old to new, endocrinology is ran by light. It's regulated by light. It's not it's not a closed system where lock and key mechanisms just kind of domino effects around your body, and you can just put a supplement in there and it fixes everything, as most people are practicing that right now. uh it's I don't understand the like treating a person's hormones without having them see the sunrise and UVA rays. That's very common for endocrinologists. Never hear them talk about light. And so that's the main thing I would point out. Your endocrinology is so intimately tied with your light environment. They're one and the same. They are like a light is like the composer, and your body's the orchestra responding to light's cues. And no practitioner, few practitioners are aware of this. And so I would really point them in that direction. And I'm glad you asked this question because I'm really passionate about it. Um, I hate seeing naturopaths with 200,000 followers on Instagram preaching hormone health, but not saying a word about light, you know? So I'm sure you can elaborate on the finer details and mechanisms of it, but that's like the context I would set for the listener. This paradigm is really critical. A lot of people are lagging behind.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I think the light is the way to unlock our biological pharmacy, and that's a lot of the problems people have. They can't do that, so they have to rely on meds and supplements. But like you just said, as soon as you put one med or supplement in, it's going to disrupt the balance, and you're going to have to take another supplement. And also, none of the supplements from factories are programmed by light anyway, so they're effectively dead. So they've lost all their
Mhm.
frequencies, because this is something I'm very into. It's not just about lock and key, it's about how minerals
Yes.
and supplements modulate and communicate using light. And I was listening to something this morning. It was all about in Jim Al Khalili's book that if you can't make something, you don't understand it, and because we can't make life yet, we don't understand. And I think this talking about light is so important, because once we get into it, it makes so much sense. It's really easy to do and it's cheap. And there's also a lot of science, decades of it, if not 100 years of it. So maybe for people who are listening, if you want to talk about how somebody, say if they're trying to get their family, or they have, say, a teenager or somebody in their 20s who's really struggling with similar things that we've talked about, what's the best place to start? Because I think you've elucidated to my favorite thing is see the sunrise and the UVA and block blue light at night. So that's kind of three things. Maybe from sort of your perspective, because people have to have a social life, they have to go to college and
Mhm.
school, they don't want to be left out, they want to go on dates. There's all, what would you suggest if you were talking to a parent or a person, one of your peers? Because you're 23, aren't you? Just so people can get, am I correct?
I turned 23 in March,
All right,
so
yeah.
I'm about
So
to turn 20. Yeah.
yeah, so it's, maybe I'll just hand that over to you, because it's again a different perspective for me as a middle-aged woman, whereas for you, you have a bigger understanding of what's the barriers, would you say, that people in their 20s and teens have to all of this?
Hmm. Oh man. This is I can speak on this for quite a while because first of all, barriers. I'm surrounded by a lot of younger people, 20s. I wish I could be around a lot of more like teenagers these days, but I'm glad that you chose me as the person to speak to them. I feel blessed that I've discovered this paradigm quite early. And if I were to really pass my realizations and communicate it in a way that facilitates this understanding better, I would say most people just aren't aware. They think implicitly that light is just this harmless optic medium. It's just something you use to see, and it's not telling your body anything. And that's a result of how we're taught about biology. It's just this closed chemical system that runs on those biochemical domino effects. So we're just not aware of that aspect of life, this intimate relationship with light. And obviously, to go into another aspect, these people are surrounded by blue light. They're surrounded by non-native EMF. So already that caps their abilities, a capacity to receive information that could help them. Jack Cruz in his 2017 Vermont video said, if you have low dopamine, you can see the truth right in front of your face and and you won't be able to recognize it. And I feel like a lot of people are in that situation, and it's tough for them to face these truths because it feels like a personal attack. It's tough to overturn your life and go against the norms for the
Yeah,
sake of
basically, so
betterment.
low dopamine turns you into a sheep or a lemming, and then you can't see
Yeah.
outside the box anymore. And I think that's very crucial for sort of teens and younger people, because they can think things as they are, because they've never seen out of the box. But yeah, I'm glad you brought up that video and the low dopamine, but I'll let you carry on, because I think again, people always want the truth, and they don't want to be lied to, but then you can get trapped in the sort of sheep and lemming cycle.
Yeah, it's really comfortable and you don't want to look at I think people know, but they're scared to look at it, right? And so to cross that gap of sheep to wolf or getting out, you could start with the practices, but I would start with something a little primordial to that, a little prior to that. I would really just focus on learning, really listen to multiple perspectives of this paradigm, listen to all the podcasts, read a few books, really set your knowledge base, really come to understand it on a deeper level, because it's a deep rabbit hole. It's not a linear learning curve at all. You have to It's like in cyclical stages where you reach a newfound level of understanding, but it's very common sense. Once it clicks in your being, it'll stay forever. And so let's just establish a few facts, very non-deniable facts. If I take nature runs off coupled systems, okay? For example, if I take an ecosystem and I take the predator out of that system, that whole ecosystem will collapse, right? There's no debate about that. Wolves in Yellowstone Park is the primordial example. We organisms run on the light dark cycle. That's been established since unicellular organisms. Since the dawn of life, we have evolved on the light dark cycle. That is also a coupled system. If you take the fact also that our eyes are clocks, that the supracosmatic nucleus currently exists in you right now and is reading light and translating it into your body to run a corresponding physiological set, that's an established fact set in the literature. That's an anatomical fact. So when we have lights on that are bright, that are blue, and that signal to our body that it's day and night, at night, that is breaking a coupled system. Okay. And when you break that coupled system in this situation, the primary repair mechanism for your mitochondria is melatonin. It regulates autophagy and apoptosis. So I like to just use the example of our respiratory proteins in mitochondria. The electron transport chain has 5 respiratory proteins, 1 through 5. If you use cyanide, you block number 4, you cut off that electron flow, 1 through 5, and you die within minutes. Okay, that's how critical this mitochondria function is. So, what's the difference from death to optimal living? Is it just a binary state, or is there a gradient? Yes, there is a gradient. It's called chronic disease. And so that gradient is when these proteins spread out, right? They spread out. It's called heteroplasmy. Dr. Doug Wallace has coined that. And so melatonin is what repairs your mitochondria to get closer together and function more optimally. If they're farther apart, you make less energy and more electrons leak out and create more inflammation. So that's essentially the first principle watered down version of someone healthy or someone in a chronic disease state. Melatonin is responsible for regulating that. And we're all destroying melatonin at night by blasting blue light into our eyes. That's the finer detail of breaking this coupled system. That is the consequence of it.
I'm just
So,
going to interrupt a moment because I know that people who are new to this will say, well, why can't I just take a melatonin supplement?
yes. Yeah. Well, Sarah will say that that melatonin supplement has no light information. When you Melatonin is made in 2 places, your eye and your mitochondria, UV by UV light and infrared light respectively. And when melatonin or any hormone is made endogenously, it has light information. When it's made in a factory, there's none of that because we don't consider that at all. So it's a different rule set. You're putting a foreign input into the system and thinking it's the same thing, but it's not. So it'll break the system of natural melatonin production. I'm sure Sarah can elucidate on the finer mechanism of why that melatonin supplement is harmful. And if you could, that would be great because I do know people who taking melatonin supplement is like the normal situation for lack of sleep, right? Oh yeah, I'll just take melatonin. Um, if you could shortly explain that just to fill in that gap for me, that would be lovely. I'm glad
I,
you touched on it.
I think also you actually answered the question yourself as well, that we make the melatonin in tiny amounts in mitochondria and behind the eye. So taking it via the gut in an enormous dose is just completely unnatural to start with. And also, whenever you take a supplement, it's usually like a bolus, like a big burst of it. And some of the supplements are like 10 milligrams. And we don't really actually know exactly how much melatonin gets produced per second in the body. So, just right from the beginning, we've got the dose wrong, and we've got the timing wrong. And also, it's not even light programmed. And also, it's going to have deuterium in it. This is something Stephanie Seneff talked about, that already, even if it did something, we're not even using it properly. But also, I think importantly, it's like things, other hormones. If you take too much of something that you can make, you can shut down your own production. And also, because we're sort of gearing this towards people in their teens and 20s, melatonin controls sex hormones, and it can influence puberty, influence luteinizing hormone, estrogen, all sorts of things. So from a perspective of children, teens, and early 20s, you're using a very powerful hormone to interfere with your own sex hormones, and we don't have any idea what the long-term consequences of this is. Also, like you said, melatonin performs apoptosis and autophagy as well. But I think if you have too much autophagy uncontrolled in the wrong place in the body, that could damage like a delicate structure like the retina or something like that, or the cornea. We don't know. My issue is the mechanism, the light, but also the dosage. And yes, there are studies about melatonin showing it's beneficial, but you need to do studies for decades to find the true effects. And these studies are still sort of recent. So just to backtrack to say, somebody who's interested, they take melatonin because they didn't know any of this, and they haven't done anything wrong. They just thought it was going to help them. What would the best step for them to be to try and stop taking melatonin and re-normalize their sleep? Because coming off melatonin for some people can be like withdrawing from a substance. They need it. And you elucidated how important sleep was at the beginning of the podcast as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you're taking melatonin, throw that thing away. Buy blue blocking glasses as fast as you can. And just really the sun rising, sunset, that's the light cycle. When the sun is absent or when it's dark outside, that's the dark cycle. We just really be congruent with how that is, with what you've put in front of your face. So those blue blocking glasses, wear the darkest pairs after sunset, wear them before sunrise. And when after sunrise, if you're indoors, wear the yellow tinted ones. Um, just really be mindful of the light dark cycle. Be as congruent to it as possible. The sunrise is your best cue. That's the thing that turns on your hypothalamus to get the everything started. I think that's what, if I'm not mistaken, Jack Cruz says that's the most important practice you could do. Not by of itself, but what it starts. It starts a critical domino effect of everything. So really start the watch the sunrise every single day. If I miss the sunrise, it's rare I miss the sunrise these days. I've never, and prior to reading Randy's book, never seen a sunrise naturally or as a practice ever. I'd wake up with my phone in my hand, blasting light at 6 a.m. It was bad. So really be cognizant of that. When you're indoors, yellow glasses, you'll make the blue lighting of indoor lighting less harsh. And sunset isn't as critical. It's great, it's awesome, but just make sure you put on the orange tinted, the red tinted glasses after dark and cover as much of your skin as possible. And you do that and just wait, your body will realign itself and work on its own um, to help you sleep better. Also, for the melatonin piece, watch that UVA rise. There's an app called Circadian. and you put in your location, that UV light through your eye is going to trigger a biochemical cascade that produces melatonin behind your eye, like Sarah said. Also, infrared light on the skin from the sun or from a red light panel also helps, but that has less circadian variation, so I'm not sure how that impacts sleep, but it's still really good for you. So, like I said previously, elucidating the light dark mechanism, the cycle, the coupled system, just adhere to that. Become really cognizant of every indoor light that you're surrounded by. Is this matching what's happening with nature outside, with the sun? And upon learning this paradigm from multiple podcasts, Sarah's podcast is awesome about this. You got to look at it from all these different pieces. And when you digest it, really become convicted in the fact that nature has billions of years of proof of work behind her. And once you have that conviction, be congruent with it. Then at that point, your behaviors will change accordingly. That's what I was alluding to initially when Sarah said, how do you bridge that gap from, being that sheep? I use that as non-judgmentally as possible, but it's just like a loose term I'm using for the sake of it. From a sheep to a wolf, or being aware, asleep to aware. You got to be really convicted in this information, because if I just tell you watch the sunrise, watch the UVA rise, block blue light at night, it's cool, it helps, but there's not much heart to it. Maybe you think like, oh, it's something I should do, but you have to do those things uh from a deep sense of this is critical, because the science, how our body's intimately tied to nature, the light dark cycle. And once the finer details you learn from Jack's podcast, Sarah's podcast, the books you read, once those coalesce in your mind, it becomes these interventions that we all tell you become a no-brainer. They take no effort to do because it just makes sense, right? If you like people, there's no willpower involved in, if there's a hot stove in front of me, it like I know that stove's gonna hurt me, right? I don't like have to resist my hand not to take it off. I just know. And so in the same token, if a blue light is in front of me at night, it doesn't make me go like, I have to put my blue blockers on, like as if it's that something like effort I have to put forth. Like it's just normal because I
Yes,
know what
it's
I'm
it's like
doing.
in Gremlins with Gizmo, and that's what I'm like. Bright light, bright light. You automatically you're repelled by it, and then, as you were saying, as soon as you see the light and your biochemistry changes, it's not an effort, because when people stop doing their circadian stuff once they've done it, they go back to feeling crap again, and they can't sleep again,
Yeah.
and they get depressed again, and they can't be bothered, and their thyroid hormone goes rubbish. So it's one of these things that I think I was going to backtrack a bit, because even if people don't get it perfect the first time, it's still always a work in progress, because people want to go out sometimes. And the problem with the blue blockers are they aren't the sexiest thing in the world. So maybe what would you suggest for somebody that's really interested to try to choose a time when things are a bit quieter? Maybe they have to revise for exams or college, and they're going to be out less, and they can wear their blue blockers in private. Or are you what would you say about how would, because I'm like you, if I know something's going to help me, I'll just do it straight away. But for people transitioning, or parents suggesting it to their children who aren't feeling great, how would you say they could start, and what happens if they make a mistake, and where's the worst place to make a mistake?
Yeah. So I struggle with this too. I obviously go out and stuff. I'm not a stickler. I'll hang out with friends after sunset. I'll do it less often because I know like the consequences, and I'm young. I know I have like a buffer, but I'll tone that down as I age, right? But the good thing about knowing like quantum biology is that, okay, let's say you go out one weekend much later than sunset. I know that I can reset my clock come sunrise, right? If you didn't know that, you would have slept in until 12 and looked at your phone when you woken up. Like, I know I can always count on the sunrise to recalibrate my clock and I'll reset the day following, right? So it's like it's less it's less bad, you know. I know I have that to fall back on always. Even if I'm out till like 12, I'll always wake up for the sunrise, even if it means sleeping for 6 hours only. So that's one. The sunrise will save you because it'll always like cue your body back into, okay, this is what time it is. Obviously, that's not ideal, but yeah, no, you don't have to become a straight edge, perfect on the dot, especially if you're young, right? That's also why I emphasize knowledge and deepening your conviction because yeah, you're that's the hard part, that's the emotional part of the journey. You're going to be from the norms, you're going to start going to the fringes of people of society. You're going to start doing things that are weird and bizarre and you're going to stand out. And in that transition, save yourself a little grace. You know, it's okay to go out with your friends. You don't need to feel bad about everything you do. But as you're deepening your conviction and learning everything, you're going to eventually realize, it's not worth it anymore. My the cost benefit analysis. It's gonna click for you one day, and it's like, okay, I'm ready to fully commit. I've had my fun, but this is what's most important for me now. So yeah, no, this is I would reiterate my previous answer. Live your life. Go out. Do all that stuff. But another side of your on another aspect of your life on the side, you're deepening your awareness of this stuff until you never forget what you've learned. Like first you're just knowing, you're flirting with the idea, you're letting it simmer and meld, brew, but then it just will never leave you. Blue light at night will stand out to you like a sore thumb. You know, your awareness will shift in these ways that will influence your behavior to where you won't even care anymore about, oh, the people will think I'm weird. Yeah, I know these blue blockers are not sexy right now. I don't care. I want to find someone who understands that if I see another person with blue blockers, I know that they are conscientious about their light cycles. I'll talk to them instead, right? So yeah, just live your life, but be just learn, okay? Just notice everything around you. You're going to start to notice all these things that are out of place and weird and not optimal. And from that point on, your behaviors will take care of itself. Uh, as for parents who are trying to get their kids on it, I know it's annoying to them if you nag, right? I don't, you don't need to nag. You don't need to convert people. Like, here's an article. Come on, you gotta do this. You gotta You don't you know that the eye is a camera? I mean, that the eye is a clock. Don't you know about the sun? Like, you don't need to do that either. Just really embody your practices. And once you start feeling better internally, your body feels better, you feel better. And then people will notice that from you that, wow, she's glowing. She is doing amazing. What's she doing? And then they'll come to you and ask you about it. It's always better to embody what you learn rather than points. uh you should know this from a knowledge based standpoint. Embody what you know first. That's going to give you the best chance of moving your loved ones forward into the paradigm for their health, for their sake of improving their chances, their odds at living a better life, because anyone who implements this paradigm is going to that's one of my favorite things about it. If you discover it at 20, not only are you set for life, right? But your kids are. The family you build in the future are going to be set. because you knew this from the start. A lot of kids are literally born in blue light, raised in blue light, which is a tragedy for me to even contemplate. But if you find this out at 20, 16, whatever, you're going to be cognizant of this. You're going to raise your baby in an appropriate and light environment. And that baby is going to reap those rewards as they grow up. And they'll know because they've experienced the rewards. They'll notice the difference in their peers, and then their family goes. So it's going to be that pebble in the pond effect. You're going to create a downstream cascade of people who just know that this is so beneficial and thank you for showing us. And it all just started with you learning and becoming convicted. It'll all take care of itself. But yeah, don't be concerned with converting people. Just take care of yourself and embody it. And when people come to you, let them know what what has helped you out.
That was brilliant. That was really profound. I think it's important that the earlier you discover something in this environment, the better. But I just want to say something for people, say in their 70s or my mum and dad's age. They've got an advantage as well because there weren't mobile phones or microwaves, and they had incandescent bulbs. So the people who are older and listening, thinking, "Oh no, I've got no hope." It's okay that at the end of the demographics they have their own intrinsic protection, and that's why it's even more important to get this message out to people in their teens and 20s, because the environment that they live in is wildly different to mine and wildly different to my parents and their grandparents, and you can save yourself a lot of heartache later, because obviously there's going to be 6G coming, more technology, so that if you can start to get a grounding in this now, and I think like you said, you learn how to fix yourself, because again, yes, of course I do things that are non-quantum, but you know how to mend yourself if you've done that, and how to offer yourself and your family the best protection. And I think that was like a really great way to sort of bring the podcast to a close, a really powerful message at the end. Is there anything else you want to add that you think is really important on this subject?
Yeah. Let's do once we've set the main thing, the main thing I'd recommend. Just learn, okay? Every practical application will come afterwards. That will take care of itself. But if I were to facilitate the application part, uh, I'd see a lot of young people with earbuds in, with a lot of Bluetooth headphones in. Um, so I don't want to say throw those out. That's too harsh. Like learn about that stuff. Bluetooth is not harmless. I'm gonna tell you that right now as well. Become aware of the effects of non-native EMF. Get ear tube earphones that have like that reduce your EMF exposure. I know there's narratives out there that say, "Oh, that's just like a conspiracy theory or whatever." Just look into it. Again, your information, your knowledge will inform your actions. Um, Obviously, watch the sunrise, UVA rise, blue light at night. Those are the key practices, I would say, that just get you started. But if there were anything else application wise, get a high quality red light panel. We're all red light deficient these days. If you can't just go outside, I introduce as much red light and infrared light into your life as possible, because when you look at the spectrum of light that we live in, that we're surrounded by, it's all blue. We're all mal illuminated, like we are with food. When I in my rabbit hole and research learning this, I've realized how critical red light is. And then I'm looking back to how I grew up. I've had no red light in my life, and I'm just now starting to integrate it. Just now starting to go outside during the morning sun. Just now buying a red light panel. So if you're a teen, really go outside, take those shoes off, put your bare feet to the earth, ground, have that red light on you. And so that's another thing I can touch on. So there's two ways you can improve your physiology right off the bat. You can capture more electrons, and then you can capture more light. If you don't have a lot of electrons, you can't capture as much light. That's the photoelectric effect. You want both. So ground, eat a lot of seafood, build your electron bank, and then couple that with a good light environment that will capture all of it, and so your body can put it to good use. And so build your electron bank, have your good light frequencies, and if you're young, I would really tell you eat a lot of seafood. Your brain is still developing. Like you have it. I'm telling you, you're blessed to have come across this information early. And even if you're in your 30s, most of what I said applies to anybody, but this is for the young people. Eat a lot of oysters, a lot of sardines, salmon. That DHA is going to shift your brain and it's going to make you a rock star, in physiologically and then downstream as a person. I did a podcast with Kelly Bento and she's raised her kids like this and they sound amazing just off the way she's quantumly raised them with these practices growing up. So introduce light into your life, build your electron bank, spam seafood, bug your mom about it, and you're going to grow up to be amazing. Keep honing your knowledge and just put that on the table and see how your life just progresses and evolves in an amazing way. This is this is the power of quantum biology. You have a healthier vessel, and this vessel is more capable now. And then from this vessel, you can spread more wisdom to your future family and friends. That's that's my favorite. Those are my favorite implications. You reap the benefits, and your loved ones will for life, and it's wonderful.
Yes, thank you. That's a good point about the electrons, because from a sort of evolutionary level, the more electrons you've got, the more complex the organism. That's why hemoglobin's more complicated than chlorophyll. But then as a human being, we can all have different amounts of electrons. And it's sort of, well, for people who don't know what one is, it doesn't have any mass, but it carries charge. So we'll just say it carries energy and information and also electric current in the body. And you touched on this at the beginning, that when you shut down the electron transport chain, our electricity, that's the definition of when we're not alive anymore. So this life force, all these electrons, and the more you have and the more excited they are by light, the more powerful you're going to be, because there isn't any supplement that can do this. You can go and do it yourself by grounding more. And that's something which I can go into in another podcast of, you don't just have to stand barefooted on the earth. There's numerous ways you can get creative, but you're basically filling yourself up with more electrons, as Kenford said. Then with DHA, you get more electrons again from the food when it's in the SN2 position. So that's more electrons. And then if you go out in the sun, you can charge up all these electrons. And we know, as we've tried to elucidate in this, so many hormones that make you feel good, function, run your libido, your sleep pattern, all pivot on how well your biology works. And if your biology works properly, you'll feel great. And I think, like, you can sort of enlighten yourself via knowledge as well. I remember when I was reading into that topic that, again, there are lots of different ways to do that. I'm not going to go into it, but knowledge is so vital, because you have to understand why you're doing something. And then also, as you said, I always say, suck it and see, just try it. Give it a chance, even if it's not perfect and you miss a few nights because you wanted to go out. Still, be consistent as well, because I think you said it took you about 3 or 4 weeks to get your sleep back. And just from your perspective, if somebody wanted to implement this or encourage their family to do it for a given amount of time, would you say a month would be, if someone's trying to say, look, let's just try this, just humor me, can we do this for X many of weeks, what would you say is a good starting place?
Yeah, do about a month, because yeah, that's another thing. I was in a place of such desperation that I was willing to try anything for as long as possible. But if you're just like coming into this and just becoming aware of this, it may seem like watching the sunrise is like it's not that big a practice. I'm just watching a sunrise. What's the big deal? Like the weight of the practice is will not hit as deep as it is, right? So you need to give it time to see the effects. That's why I also stressed about the learning aspect.
Mhm.
Once you realize how light is intimately tied with biology, then it'll just click. Like, okay, this makes sense. Even if you don't see the effects right away, you'll just know that this is the right thing to do. Your experience is just what caps it, what builds your conviction. Like, okay, this is no duh, I'm gonna watch the sunrise now. Yeah, give it time, and in between, just learn. And I know it seems like I know it's sexier to take a lot of supplements, buy fancy gadgets, but
That's what
trust me,
costs money.
yeah. This is free and it seems like small, but it's huge in its effects. So yeah, give it time, learn, and just watch your
I'm just
sleep, your
I'm just
hormones.
to backtrack about learning for recommended reading. Would you say that Mitochondriac Manifesto is the absolute must to start with? Is there anything more simple that people could learn, or do you think that's because I found it very easy to read, but then
Mhm.
I am a scientist, but then there are books that are difficult to read. So what maybe would you, are there any particular podcasts? Because I send people to Dr. Max Gilhane's trio with Jack, because that's very easy for anybody who's never heard of any of this to start. The Mitochondriac Manifesto definitely on the list. What else would you suggest as an entry route for people?
Perfect question because I was about to like throw in resources there. Uh, Mitochondriac Manifesto is a bit technical if you've never dived into science at all. Like I said, there's gonna be a learning curve, so you're gonna need to be patient with yourself. It's not linear. Like, oh, I'm gonna gradually know this. No, it's you feel like you're not gonna understand it for a few weeks, and then it just clicks. Same thing, clicks. That's the learning curve of quantum biology because it's just that deep, that intricate. Understand that right off the bat, and then dive into these resources. Mitochondriac Manifesto, really awesome beginner's book. He basically takes Jack Cruz podcasts and consolidates it in a way that's digestible and structured where the paradigm hits deeper. Reread that book plenty of times. It'll get you'll digest it more on each reread. Sarah recommended Max Gilhane's podcast. That podcast is awesome. He has his episode with Jack Cruz, Dr. Jalal Khan, Sarah, both Sarahs. All that is wonderful. Sarah Kleiner, Carrie Bennett have a podcast called Quantum Conversations. That's really great too for simplification, just digestible learning. Um, Quantum Health TV, that's also another great podcast for entry learning, but also dabble in Jack Cruz's podcasts, right? This is, you got to learn from the man himself. He's more detailed and intricate, but the more podcasts you watch of Jack Cruz, you start to understand his lingo. He reiterates a lot of points, and once you get those points, you know you've hit that level up on your learning curve. So, yes, a lot of podcasts. I've given you a bunch to start with. Chew on those. And a few books I'd recommend. Books are great to really amplify your learning as well. There's three I like. The Mitochondriac Manifesto is a great one. I don't know if you've read this, Sarah. Healing is Voltage by Jerry Tennant.
Yep.
That one really, yeah, first one ever that put me in the biophysical lens. It said like the body is quantum until it dies, and then it becomes Newtonian. That's when he put in my idea of electrons, protons, and neutrons. That's the first principle of physical health. Third is Energy Medicine by James Oshman. That's where he really takes you from, yeah, this old paradigm of the body is just these chemicals, domino effects, closed system, to the new paradigm of think more of antennas and frequencies and how that is what drives biology instead. It goes from it essentially bridges the gap from biochemistry to biophysics as well. Energy medicine and both of his energy medicine books. That trio, like reread those, and you'll find yourself completely understanding the weight of the paradigm. And just yeah, take that soup, let it simmer, and you'll have a pretty good start. And then you go deeper into Jack's blogs, all that. Once you hit a certain learning curve, your behaviors are set, and then you can go as deep as you want from there. But those are great beginner resources to just understand initially.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So you have your own podcast as well, the Lighthouse podcast. So if people enjoyed listening to you, they can check you out there. So I'll put all of the resources that you've mentioned in the links under the video. And I just want to thank you so much for doing this at short notice on a Saturday as well. And I really appreciate your time. And I hope, and I'm sure that this hasn't landed on deaf ears, as we would say, and that it's going to make an impact. So thank you again for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. It's a critical message and a critical audience. So I'm grateful that you thought of me
Oh
to
no.
convey it.
And there's a lot more to come from you as well. It's, watch this space of where your brain's going to be going, and I'm sure you'll be back on the podcast with me again to decode the current rabbit hole I'm in, which I won't do. It's to do with water and light and different frequencies of minerals. But anyway, we'll
Yeah,
wrap up
more
for
to
today.
come.
Yes, but also I think it's really important to, like you said, that's why I wanted to do this, just to start at the beginning and just, if in doubt, just go out in the sun, because it'll heal a lot of things, and just start there and then block the blue light at night because it's messing up your light and dark. And if people only take those messages home today, that's a really good start. And then there's all these wonderful other rabbit holes to go into, but not yet, because you will get really confused. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this useful. Kenford's going to be back on the channel again, where we're going to talk about some of Jack's work and other similar polymaths, and make some of the physics more digestible and understandable to people who aren't scientists or physicists, so they can apply quantum biology to their daily lives and reap the benefits. If you're interested in working with me, I have an affordable monthly coaching group where we have 2 live Zooms a week, an open forum for discussion where you can learn more about quantum biology, make protocols for yourself, meet like-minded people and other practitioners if you are a practitioner yourself. And the links to this are in the notes, as are the other links to books which Kenford kindly recommended, and also Kenford's podcast, the Lighthouse podcast. So thanks for watching, and see you again soon.